You were never reckless with money. You were just generous, until it hurt. I was never the reckless one. Never the spender with 5 maxed-out credit cards or the impulsive buyer chasing dopamine hits in mall parking lots. I was the responsible friend, the one who always picked up the check, who said, "Don't worry, I've got this," who lent money without ever writing it down, who paid bills for siblings, covered emergencies for coworkers, filled gas tanks and birthday envelopes without blinking. Not because I was rich, but because I wanted to be good. And it never felt wrong. Not at first. It felt generous, human, noble even. I liked seeing their relief. I liked the nods of appreciation, the gratitude texts. It made me feel useful, safe, like I mattered. But slowly, quietly, something shifted. A new tension crept in. When my phone rang, I flinched. Not because I didn't love them, but because I started to wonder, what will they need this time? And what hit the hardest wasn't the money leaving my account. It was how rarely anyone asked if I was okay, how they stopped checking in when they didn't need something, how no one ever said, "You've done enough." The kindness I never questioned became a pattern I couldn't break, until I noticed that being needed was the only time I felt seen, and that realization didn't feel kind. It felt empty. You don't give because they need it. You give because you're afraid to be unloved. The moment was small, like most of them. Dinner with friends, nothing fancy. 4 people, 2 bottles of wine, laughter that sounded just a little too rehearsed. Then the check came, and before anyone reached for their wallet, I already had mine open. "I've got it," I said, with that familiar, practiced smile. Someone muttered, "You sure?" But no one insisted. The check disappeared. I paid, like always. The truth? I didn't want to pay. Not that night. I was tired. Rent was due. My car needed work. But I said yes before I even thought about it. Because saying no felt worse. Because I knew what would follow. A flicker of discomfort across their faces. That awkward silence. That half second when I wouldn't be the reliable one. The generous one. The easy one. So I paid. Not for dinner, but for the illusion that I belonged. That's when it hit me. I don't give because they need it. I give because I'm afraid of what happens if I don't. Will they still call? Will I still be invited? Will I still be seen as the good friend, the one who always shows up, the one who's always fine? My generosity stopped being kindness a long time ago. It became performance, self-preservation, my way of buying closeness, one unspoken transaction at a time. Because here's the hard truth no one likes to say. Some of us learned early that love is conditional, that approval can disappear, that if you're not useful, you're replaceable. And money? It becomes the safest way to stay needed. You don't have to open up. You don't have to ask for anything. You just swipe the card, cover the bill, play the role, and they keep coming back, not necessarily for you, but for what you make easy. I started noticing it everywhere. How I'd offer to drive, just to feel included. How I'd loan money and say, "No rush," even when I was struggling. How I'd overtip, overspend, overcommit, not because I was generous, but because I was scared to feel invisible. Generosity became a strategy, and beneath the smile was a quiet fear. If I stop paying, do I stop mattering? That's the real cost, not the money, the performance, the emotional debt you accumulate trying to earn your place in people's lives, not because you're weak, but because you learn to survive by being agreeable, helpful, convenient, and now you're not sure who you'd be without all that. But maybe it's time to find out. You try to say no, but your chest tightens, your mind races, and you fold. It was a simple text. "Hey, could I borrow a bit just to cover rent? I'll pay you back soon, promise." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. I wasn't angry. I wasn't surprised. I had helped him before, twice, maybe 3 times, and I knew how this usually played out. The money would leave my account. The repayment would never come. And still, I couldn't type the word no. I tried. For a full minute, I stared at the blinking cursor, feeling my heart race. I imagined his disappointment, the shift in tone, the possibility that he'd stop reaching out, that I'd go from friend to inconvenience in a single sentence. My brain scrambled for explanations, excuses, ways to soften the refusal. And before I could even finish the thought, I had already written, "Sure, how much do you need?" That was the moment I realized my money wasn't about generosity anymore. It was about guilt. Saying no didn't just feel uncomfortable. It felt dangerous, like I was risking something bigger than cash, like I was tampering with my identity. Because if I'm not the one who helps, then who am I? If I say no, will they still care? Will I still belong? Most people think generosity is about giving, but for some of us, it's about not losing, not being the one who disappoints, not being the one who turns away. Our yes is wired to our self-worth. Our no feels like a betrayal, not just of others, but of the version of ourselves we've been trying to protect for years, the dependable one, the helper, the emotionally safe person who never becomes the problem. But the truth is, every yes that comes from fear writes a quiet sentence inside your body. Your needs don't matter. And over time, that sentence becomes a script. You start to say yes even when it hurts. You overextend. You overdraft. You overperform. Not out of love, but out of reflex. Because peace isn't peace if it's purchased with self-erasure. What I've learned, slowly, painfully, is that guilt is not proof of goodness. It's often just a leftover emotion from a life where love had to be earned, where survival meant being agreeable. And now, even when the threat is gone, the reflex stays. You feel it in your chest, the freeze, the panic, the automatic reply, "Of course, anything, always, but maybe next time I'll try something new." I'll sit in that moment, breathe through the tightness, let the silence stretch, and instead of folding, I'll ask myself, if I say no and they walk away, was I ever really safe with them to begin with? One day, your account is empty, and so are you. It wasn't dramatic. No final straw, no angry voicemail, no big fight. Just another day, another request. "Hey, do you think you could help out one more time?" I said I'd check. I already knew I couldn't. I opened my banking app and stared at the number. Not 0, but close enough. Enough to know I wasn't okay. Enough to feel the weight settle in my stomach like wet concrete. And still, I considered it. I sat in my car, parked in the grocery lot, engine off. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I just stared. At the dashboard, at my reflection in the rearview mirror, at the version of myself I'd become. Reliable, generous, holding everyone up while quietly folding inwards. No one knew I was this tired. No one knew how much I'd been carrying. Because I never said no. Because I never showed the cost. That's how it happens. Not with fire, but with fatigue. You give. You help. You support. Until one day you realize no one's asked how you're doing in years. They thank you, sure, but no one checks in. No one wonders if you're drained, scared, underwater. Because you're the strong one. The one who always says, "I've got it." So they let you. Again and again. And you wonder, not with bitterness, but with quiet ache, what would happen if you stopped? Would they still come around if there was nothing left to take? Would they still love you if you weren't useful? That day, I didn't send the money. I didn't reply at all. I sat in the car until the sun dipped behind the trees, and the silence filled every corner of my chest. Not angry, not noble, just done. Not because I stopped caring, but because I finally saw the truth. They were never asking if I could help. They were just used to me saying yes. Sometimes the breaking point isn't loud. It's a moment when your body says, enough. And for the first time, you don't argue. You thought giving made you lovable, but it only made you invisible. There was a time I thought it was strength. This ability to say yes, to always show up, to hold space and write checks, and never let anyone feel the sting of not having enough, except me. I wore it like a badge. I thought it made me a good person, a good friend, a good partner, the kind of person people want around. But somewhere along the way, that identity became a prison. No one told me this when I was younger, but I know it now. When your love language becomes sacrifice, people stop asking if you're okay. They just assume you are. They assume your giving means you're full. They don't ask what it's costing you, emotionally, financially, spiritually, because you never bring the bill. And so, the lie grows. The more I give, the more I'm loved. But what really happens is that you become invisible behind your usefulness. People stop seeing you, not out of cruelty, out of comfort. They love how easy you make everything, how little you ask for in return. And slowly, you start to believe that's all you're worth. That if you stopped giving, they'd stop showing up. That without your wallet, your support, your constant yes, you'd have nothing left to offer. And for some of us, that belief started early, when love was earned through behavior, when being good meant being quiet, when help was how we stayed close to people who didn't know how to be close otherwise. And now, as adults, we repeat the same pattern, helping, fixing, overfunctioning, because somewhere deep down, we still believe that love is transactional, that our value is directly tied to our willingness to go without. But love built on self-erasure isn't love. It's fear. And the tragedy is, the more you give from that place, the more you teach people not to check on you, not to ask how you're doing, not to see you as a person with limits, needs, feelings. You become the emotional ATM, always available, never empty, silently breaking behind the scenes. It's not your fault. You were taught that giving makes you good. But here's the truth you were never told. Being good at disappearing doesn't mean you're worthy. It just means you've gotten used to being unseen. You weren't afraid of going broke. You were afraid of being rejected. I used to think my fear was about money, that what kept me up at night was the balance in my account, the credit cards inching higher, the unpaid invoices sitting in my inbox. But that wasn't it. Not really. What I feared, deeply, secretly, was the moment someone would ask me for help, and I'd say no, and they'd look at me differently, or worse, stop looking at me at all. That was the real currency I was spending. Connection. Every time I gave when I didn't have enough, every time I overextended or loaned or rescued someone again, I wasn't buying groceries or fixing a problem. I was buying safety, approval, proximity, the hope that saying yes would keep the relationship intact, and the idea of saying no. It didn't just feel uncomfortable, it felt dangerous, because in my mind, love had always been something fragile, something you could lose if you said the wrong thing. And money, giving, offering, smoothing things over, became my emotional insurance policy. I wasn't buying silence, I was buying belonging, hoping that if I was generous enough, agreeable enough, useful enough, no one would leave. But eventually, I realized I had built a life around protecting others from disappointment, while carrying all of mine in silence. It's strange how clearly the body remembers what the mind tries to explain away. That tightness in the chest when someone says, "Can I ask you a favor?" That jolt of anxiety before replying, that immediate calculation, "If I say yes, I suffer. If I say no, I lose them. It's not logical, but it's real and exhausting. Because when you're driven by the fear of disappointing people, you never ask, what do I need? What do I want? What's sustainable for me? You only ask, will they still love me after this answer? And over time, that fear strips you of your voice. You become a version of yourself that's always smiling, always helping, always saying, of course. And no one sees the tremble in your hands. No one hears the quiet in your heart when you ask, why do I feel alone in a room full of people I've taken care of? Because the truth is, when you say yes out of fear, people may stay, but you won't. You'll slowly disappear from your own life. And here's the shift I'm learning to make, gently, not perfectly. Not all disappointment is rejection. Not every no means goodbye. And not every relationship is worth the cost of your self-respect. Saying no doesn't make you selfish. It makes you visible. The first time I said no, I expected something to break. Not just in the conversation, in the relationship, in the room, in me. It was small. A friend texted, "Hey, any chance you could spot me for this week's rent? I hate to ask." I stared at the message, that familiar tension rising, the reflex to say yes, to reassure, to keep the peace. I felt the script start to run. They're struggling. You're safe. Don't let them down. But this time, something shifted. I didn't ignore the tension. I sat with it, breathed through the guilt, the heat in my neck, the tightness in my chest. And slowly, I typed, I really want to help, but I can't this time. No apology, no explanation, just a boundary, soft, clear, real. There was a pause, a full hour of silence. I felt every second of it. And then the reply came. Got it. Appreciate you either way. Nothing exploded. The world didn't collapse. I didn't lose a friend. I didn't become the villain in someone else's story. I was still here. And for the first time in a long time, I felt here. That's the shift no one talks about. When you stop saying yes just to be liked, something incredible happens. People see you. Not the version of you that always rescues, always agrees, always pays. But the version that has edges, limits, preferences. And the people who truly love you, they adjust. Maybe not immediately, maybe not easily, but they stay. One friend was clearly hurt, pulled away, needed time. Another responded with understanding, and for the first time offered to buy me dinner. That was enough. Saying no isn't rejection. It's recognition of yourself. It's how you begin to repair the invisible erosion of years spent managing other people's comfort at the expense of your own. It's not about becoming hard. It's about becoming whole. And the irony? The more I say no without guilt, the more room I have to say yes with joy, not resentment. Because love without boundaries isn't generosity. It's self-erasure. Real giving comes from fullness, not fear. I haven't stopped being generous. I still give. I still help. I still reach for the check sometimes. But now it's different. It doesn't come from the anxious need to prove I'm good, or to hold a relationship together with money. It comes from something quieter, a deeper sense of peace, a knowing I am allowed to give, but I don't have to disappear to do it. That's the new generosity, one that includes me. I give when I can, not when I'm afraid not to. I ask myself, can I offer this without resentment, without expectation? If the answer is no, I wait. I breathe. I choose differently. And the world keeps turning. My relationships haven't vanished. Some shifted. A few fell away. But the ones that stayed? They're stronger now. Clearer. More mutual. I've stopped apologizing for not being the hero. For not rescuing everyone. I've stopped explaining myself when I say no. I've started trusting that the people who love me can handle my limits. And more importantly, that I can handle their reactions. I used to think I had to be everything for everyone. That love was earned through sacrifice. That silence was safer than boundaries. But I know better now. Now, I give from a full cup. Not because I'm perfect, not because I owe it, but because I want to. Because my yes is real, and my no is honest. And when I look at my bank account now, I still feel the tug, the old instinct to give beyond what I have, to please, to prove. But then I hear a quieter voice inside say, "You've given enough. You've earned your peace too. They liked me more when I gave them money, but I like myself more now. When I give myself peace,